It is an historic day for the great Iraqi nation. We have made real one of its most important achievements. Nouri al-Maliki, Iraqi Prime Minister.
Welcome back to Inside Iraq. We are discussing the US-Iraq security pact with Sabah al-Mukhtar and Mahmoud Uthman. Before the break, Sabah al-Mukhtar asked you, with all the doubt and reservation you have about this security agreement, why did you vote for it if it is not in the interest of the Iraqis?
Well, I think this agreement is not ideal, definitely. It's not satisfactory for us, but we have voted for it for three reasons. First of all, there was a consensus and a paper agreed on between the main blocs in Parliament, the majority, that they will try to solve their problems in between, have a common position, and vote for the agreement and try to implement it as much as they can. Secondly, the ones who rejected the agreement, a minority who rejected it, they never explained to us and they never gave us a better alternative because they didn't have any alternative. They just rejected. But what is the alternative to the agreement? They didn't have a ready alternative so that one could study it. Thirdly, we compare between this agreement and the present situation in which American soldiers are here. They are authorized to do anything they like. Nobody can punish them or anything. And we are under Chapter 7 of the United Nations. So we thought the agreement is less dangerous or have less damages to the Iraqi people. Both are not good. But if you compare them, the agreement may be less negative than the present situation which is going on. That's why.
In that case, let me find out whether you managed to convince Sabah al-Mukhtar. Sabah al-Mukhtar, these arguments as presented by Mahmoud al-Uthman, do they convince you?
Answer number two is not a good enough reason, because we are talking about a treaty which is looking at the future of Iraq. So it doesn't matter whether they can sort their problems internally or not. That's not relevant. You do not mortgage the future because you want to sort your problem today. This is number one. Number two, talking about the agreement, the situation is going to be better. I guarantee to you, every single atrocity that has been committed so far by the Americans, taking Abu Ghraib, taking Haditha, taking Abir, taking Sahatum al-Nusur, any of these things could still happen exactly the same way under the treaty, and it will have exactly the same results as it did before the treaty. So the idea somehow that the treaty is going to change the situation is not correct. And as far as Chapter 7, this is the biggest public relation gimmick has ever been made. Chapter 7 is a chapter of the United Nations which empowered the Americans to come to Iraq. If it finishes on the 31st of December, there is no Chapter 7. The Americans can leave. And even if it is in violation of that, the UN will not be cross with the Americans. This is one of the biggest gimmicks. This is the public relations exercise of taking Iraq out of Chapter 7. There is nothing that Iraq can go into Chapter 7 so that you can take it out. And if one looks at the protocol itself, it has such fluffy words which doesn't say anything, but because Iraq is now nice and because dictatorship is gone and because this, that, and the other, then Iraq should be out of Chapter 7. Iraq is not in Chapter 7. Chapter 7 is not a prison to go in.
Let us give a chance to Dr. Mahmoud Uthman to answer. Go ahead, Doctor.
Well, I think it's right. The treaty is not very clear, the clauses. There is no guarantee that it will be implemented, like Security Council or something. But I think the Iraqis, when they have the choice, they have to work very hard outside with the U.S., U.S. Security Council, with the big countries like Russia, China, France, England, everybody try to implement this agreement and to have guarantees for that this will be implemented. But in any case, whether this is so or not, I think we have to give it time. Time will prove whether they are accepted, the people who accepted it or the ones who rejected are right.
If that is the case, Dr. Mahmoud,
the miseries and the sufferings of Iraqi people will be less.
Dr. Mahmoud, if that is the case, why did you put the cart before the horse? Why now said there is a plebiscite, there is a referendum that is coming sometimes perhaps in June, July to for the Iraqis to cast their ballot about this security pact? Why not present it before the parliament vote in order to give the Iraqis a choice?
Yes, I think I was of the opinion that the referendum should be made before the parliament opinion, or with the parliament opinion. You do it later in 6 months, it's not useful, really. I don't agree with it. I think it should be done, if it's at all to be done, next year with the next parliamentary election, so that people will have the right to accept or reject the treaty and accept or reject the parliamentarians who voted with or against.
Sabah al-Mukhtar, will Iraqis be better off with this agreement or without this agreement? Will we see the end, the very last GI in Iraq by 2011?
This is a dream which will not happen. The Americans are building bases that they are not leaving. This treaty doesn't force them to go out. The talk of 2011, depending on the circumstances there, and the government is bound to ask them to stay. The situation, however, in Iraq will not change following this agreement, neither to the worse nor to the better. It is an American requirement to try and give themselves legitimacy, but it is a shame on a government that claims to represent Iraq and a parliament which betrays the trust of the people of that country and sign an agreement for the future which they don't agree with, they don't know what it is, and it doesn't produce any results for the Iraqis.
Mahmoud Uthman, now that Obama's administration will be coming soon, do you think perhaps all this will become irrelevant, meaning to say that Obama will accelerate the withdrawal of U.S. troops from Iraq and perhaps even will give a notice, say, within a year, we're going to be out?
No, I think Obama will implement this agreement. He wanted the withdrawal till the end of 2010 by keeping Mr. Robert Gates and David Petraeus and everybody for a year at least. I think he has it. He will have this agreement, and he supported it. I think he will implement it. Maybe quicker than 2011, but he will, because he has been always for withdrawal from Iraq.
Sabah al-Mukhtar, one of the bloc in parliament that opposed this agreement, and perhaps even they were on record that if this agreement is to be implemented and be signed and approved by Iraqi parliament, we are going to resort to armed resistance. That is the Sadrist. Do you think Muqtada Sadr, now he has a chance to fulfill his threat?
I'm not so sure. I don't want to speak on that subject because I don't have enough knowledge, but I think it is absolute legitimate right of the Iraqi people under international law to fight the occupation and resist the occupation of their country. This is an inherent right of all people of the world who are under occupation. We can give the occupation any color we want. It could be pink or green. It's spreading democracy or whatever. Occupation is occupation, and it has to be resisted by force. And it is not by political process, because occupation is a military activity and it has to be resisted by military force and not by politics.
Director of Arab Lawyers Association in London, Sabah al-Mukhtar. Mahmoud Uthman, an Iraqi MP from the Kurdistan Coalition Front. Gentlemen, thank you for being guests on Inside Iraq. To access the show and to send us your comments, please go to aljazeera.net/English. We have reached the end of this show. Join me next week when we take another look inside Iraq. Until then, this is Jassim Azawi. Goodbye.